Today started out just like any other day, with a morning walk on the beach. It was a surprisingly cool day in the summer, around 80 degrees, when it was normally well over 100. Leaving my front door unlocked, I walked past the guard gate and crossed the road, the beach just beyond it. It was low tide, perfect walking conditions. About 20 minutes into my walk, the clouds parted enough for the sun to peek through. This will be the perfect picture, I thought, and pulled my phone out of my bag. Crap, I said as I dropped my phone, the thing landing between two rocks. I sighed, just knowing that I broke the screen. I bent down to retrieve the phone, putting my hand in the gap and feeling around. I couldn't feel it anywhere. I moved my hand deeper into the gap and froze. I could no longer feel the sand, but instead, I felt a warm breeze. I had little time to register what was going on, for at that moment, everything went black. When I could see again, I found that the beach was nowhere in sight. Instead, I saw a typical mid-century suburban street with neatly manicured lawns and white picket fences, the sight one would normally see in a Norman Rockwell painting. After a moment spent collecting my thoughts, I spotted my phone lying face down on the sidewalk. I felt relief as I picked it up and found everything to be intact. There was no service, which puzzled me, but that was just small potatoes compared to my surroundings. I felt somewhat dazed as I walked down the sidewalk, still looking around. 2 houses down, a child was leaving the front door with his bicycle. "Hi, Mom," he said. "Be home by dinner," she replied, and shut the door. As I neared the house, the boy had walked out of the gate and was riding his bicycle in my direction. As he noticed me, he jammed on his brakes and nearly fell off his bike. "Sorry, ma'am," he said politely. "No problem," I replied. He seemed to stare at me for a bit too long, with a look of nervousness coming across his face as he noticed me in more detail. He then sped off, swerving a bit as he seemed quite perturbed. I became a bit perturbed myself, wondering what was going on, with him staring at me like that. I continued mulling this over as I walked, spying a service station a block ahead. I eventually reached the service station, where a '51 Chevy sat at one of the gas pumps. A typical-looking teenage boy, for the time at least, stood pumping gas. A man in a suit and horn-rimmed glasses walked out of the building and over to his car. "All ready for you, sir," the boy said respectfully. The man gave a nod and got in his car, starting it up and driving away. The boy pulled a handkerchief from his back pocket and wiped his forehead with it. This all seems so peculiar. I wonder if I had accidentally wandered onto a movie set. "Good afternoon, ma'am." I was startled from my thoughts as the boy spoke to me. "Hello," I said, looking closer at him. There was a name tag on the left side of his shirt. Jimmy. Jimmy looked me up and down like the little boy had earlier, and then said, "You're not from around here, are you?" I grew confused at this statement. What was it about me that caused everyone to look at me like this? "No. How did you know that?" I asked, trying to satisfy my curiosity. Jimmy didn't reply, and turned and walked back inside the service station. I decided to follow him, when I spotted a newspaper box beside the door. The headline on the front page blared out at me. "Tensions mount in ever-increasing war in Korea." I bent to take a closer look, and that was when I saw the date. August 12th, 1952. A second later, my legs gave way and I fell to the ground, stunned. Talk about delayed reaction. Jimmy was beside me moments later, helping me up and asking what happened. I lied. "No idea. I think the sun just got in my eyes." "Yes, it is a bit warm today, isn't it?" Jimmy spoke to me. Turning, I walked back in the direction I had originally come from, without even a farewell. I was once again outside of the house I came in at. As I drew closer, everything suddenly went black again. It took a little longer to be able to see this time, but I could feel the sand under my feet and hear the roar of the waves. I was back on the beach. I decided to cut my walk short and head back home. When I arrived, I called my best friend, Luke. I told him what happened, and he sounded fascinated. He was over about 5 minutes later. He wanted to see it for himself. I tried to stall as long as I could, the experience having rattled me quite a bit, but Luke kept insisting, as he usually does, and I finally relented. I locked the front door and we walked through the guard gate, crossed the street and ended up at the beach. Shortly, we were at the rocks again. We stood, not saying anything. I could feel adrenaline coursing through me. "Liz, are you feeling okay?" asked Luke. I really think this is a bad idea, I responded, my reluctance evident in my words. But if you want, I'll go first to show you how it's done. Slowly, I got to my knees and reached tentatively into the gap and felt around. Everything went black for a second, and then suddenly I was back, the same side of the suburban street greeting me. A moment later, Luke appeared beside me, opening his eyes. Holy crap, he said excitedly. I regrettably didn't share in his excitement. There was a feeling of tension that I couldn't tell the source of. I decided to try to walk it off, and Luke caught up to me quickly. A child exited the front door of a house with his bicycle, but you already know that part. This time, things didn't go the same. Instead of riding past us, the boy went the other way, the same direction that we were headed. By the time we reached the service station, I saw the boy and Jimmy in a conversation. As we got closer, I could make out some of it. Mom said you have to be home by dinner, the younger boy said to Jimmy, who I guess was the little boy's brother. I can't, Harry. Mr. Napole needs me to work until closing tonight. Just go home and tell her, Jimmy said, and with that, Harry got back on his bike and rode towards home. I exchanged a glance with Luke and then said to myself, Gee, that's a bit odd. Pardon? Asked Luke. Sorry, just thinking out loud. The first time that I came here, this didn't happen. Luke shrugged, saying nothing. Are you satisfied yet? I asked, wanting just to go back home. No way! This is just too cool to walk away from. I shuddered and then spoke again. Fine, just do one thing for me, and walk me home first. You know where it is now, so you can come back here on your own. Luke looked hurt, but being my friend, he opted to make the right choice. Back at my house, we went over everything. The consensus was that we had somehow found a wrinkle in time, a portal to the way things used to be. Luke said, I want to go back and find out more. I sort of agreed, as curiosity was beginning to worm its way back into my psyche. Well, why don't we go back tomorrow, though? I'm a little worn out. Luke reluctantly agreed, and we set a time to meet back at the beach, around 9 tomorrow morning. I didn't sleep well that night, constantly thinking of the implications of this time travel. I eventually fell asleep, and woke up around 8 that morning. I decided to put on a dress, despite hating wearing them. I thought maybe that would help me blend in a little better, something Luke and I had discussed last night. We met up at 9 a.m. sharp, and Luke looked pretty good. He was wearing a nice suit, and had gotten his hair cut pretty short, a vast difference from his normally shaggy do he had sported since the senior year of high school. Without many words, Luke went first this time, and I followed suit. We were back on the same street, where we walked the other way, opposite of the service station. Walking along, the houses grew fewer and fewer, and a more downtown-looking area emerged. As we entered the area, the people walking on the sidewalk towards us stopped and stared as we passed. What's going on? Luke asked worriedly. I don't know, I replied. Once we had passed the spectators, I heard them break into a rapid conversation. It wasn't understandable, and we pressed on, feeling paranoid. What was all that about? That was the last thing I heard before the sharp pain filled my head and the world around me faded into nothing. I awoke in a small room, cinder block walls surrounding me and a metal table with an ashtray and legal pad in front of me. A door to the right opened, and a man in a nice suit walked in and took a seat opposite me. Hello, ma'am. My name is Detective Hosty. I need to ask you a few questions. Do you know anything about the disappearance of Harry Jones? I furrowed my brow in confusion. Who the heck is Harry Jones? I asked, the name sounding somehow familiar, but in the moment, it didn't ring any bells. Detective Hosty looked intently at me, mistrust in his eyes. I think you know exactly who he is. His brother saw you talking to him yesterday outside of his house. It then became clear, the little boy. Oh yes, I didn't know his name, but I do remember him. He almost ran into me on his bike. He was very polite about it. Detective Hosty seemed to relax, but the mistrust in his eyes remained. What exactly is going on? I asked. Harry Jones didn't come home for dinner last night, and so his mother called the police. We don't care for outsiders here, and you're an outsider. So, when his brother Jimmy informed us of you talking to him, you became our prime suspect. You and your friend could be in a lot of trouble. I then remembered about Luke. "What have you done with him?" I asked, a little too sharply. "Calm down, ma'am. You aren't considered the prime suspect. Your friend is. We just need a few details so we know what really happened." Over the next hour, I explained exactly what happened. I probably seemed to be a nut to the detective, but I told him everything nonetheless, somehow knowing that would get me out of here. Sure enough, when it concluded, I was free to go. I stood outside of the police station, wondering what to do next. I didn't really want to leave Luke behind, but I also didn't want to be in this place anymore. Somebody passing by stopped and stared, and that made me break into a panicked run back to the portal. I arrived maybe 5 minutes later, and was back on the beach 30 seconds after that. I pulled up my phone when I could see again and checked the web for news of Luke. Call it a hunch, but I had a terrible feeling about what was going to happen. I finally found a news article dated August 14, 1952. Search for accomplice continues. An unknown man has been arrested and charged with the kidnapping of 6-year-old Harold Jones. A woman who was seen with this unknown man was questioned by police Saturday, but was released on lack of evidence. If anyone has any knowledge on the whereabouts of this woman, they are urged to contact police as soon as possible. A photo was displayed beside the article, a photo of me. I dropped the phone in shock and followed suit, fainting. I came 2 minutes later, all of the horror still remaining in my mind as I scrambled to find my phone. I opened it and scrolled to the next article. "Have you seen me?" A larger photo of me was beside the article. The article was as follows. Unidentified woman still missing from police search. Any person with knowledge on her whereabouts is asked to call police immediately, but not to approach her. She is considered extremely dangerous, and the phone flashed for a minute before I finished reading, and a new article appeared in its place. Execution to be held at noon. An unidentified man has been charged with the murder of Harold Jones and is sentenced to hang. The hanging is scheduled for 12 p.m. today, so come out and watch this man pay the ultimate price for his crime. The unidentified woman sought out as this man's accomplice is still at large, so I couldn't read any further. The tears were just too much. This was all my fault, and I knew that I had to make it right. I ran out the front door and out to the gate, crossing the road. I made it to the rocks on the beach a minute later and without hesitating, reached between the gap and... Search for missing woman continues. Elizabeth Post, 28, was last seen at her apartment on August 12, 2016 at approximately 11 a.m., where she had been heading out for her morning walk. If anyone has any information regarding her whereabouts, contact Crime Stoppers. Her family has made a plea. Please, help our daughter return home safe. If anyone has taken her, please, just give her back. We won't even press any charges. We only want our baby back. What a sad story, Corinne Reeves said. Yes, Corinne, it is. Our hearts are with the family of that young woman, said her co-anchor, Jason Corning. In other news, another local resident, Luke Olson, has been reported missing. Both of these people have a connection to each other, and police are looking for any tips on the whereabouts of these people.